So there wasn't any turkey at the so-called first Thanksgiving, which is not the first Thanksgiving. So there's no turkey, there's no succotash. No, wait, there might have been succotash. Okay, New Amsterdam was renamed New York on September 8th, 1664. This is after the year of the table knife, 1637. So many years after the year of the table knife. And it was named New York in honor of the Duke of York, who is James II of England, and in whose name the English had captured it. So, in the Duke of York's name. So, it used to be New Amsterdam. New York used to be named New Amsterdam. So, there's a little factoid for you. Put that in your pocket and hold on to it. The dodo bird was wiped out by the Dutch or the French. I don't know. Humanity wiped out the dodo bird. Now, a lot of this was about trade. The Dutch was all about the money. So these companies, the Dutch West Indies, the Dutch East Indies, the British East Indies, the British West Indies, I don't know why they were separating East and West, even though they were both in North America. So it was like, what the hell are you all doing? But during the 1500s, 1600s was the Beaver Wars. So a lot of it was for pelts. What are you going to do? How are you going to make money, right? You come into this new land. Land is a pretty good way to have made money if they were thinking, centuries in the future. Then just the land itself would have been, a viable commercial option. But they wanted that quick money. They wanted to get in, get the stuff, go there, sell the stuff. And so the Dutch East West India companies, they were trying to monopolize the spice trade, but they were a corporation, so they had investors, and they were doing, making profits, but they also had the statute, they also had the authority of the state. And so these were the first multinational corporations, and they're all about the money. So this is exactly, essentially what the American Empire is doing all across the world today. But it was the Dutch at first, and the British, and the Swedish, the Swedes, the French, and the Spanish, right? So those are all your imperialists who are trying to invade Mother America. So buffalo, beaver skin, deer skin, buffalo hides, buffalo skins, beaver skins, deer skins, white-tailed deer skins, pelts, right? Caribou. And there's lobsters and stuff too. So let's go back to 1621. 1621 is the Thanksgiving Day that everybody thinks they know, and this is what we're all going to celebrate tomorrow, right? Today is November 22nd, 2017, but tomorrow everybody's going to get together and they're going to have green bean casserole and some Parker House rolls, cranberry sauce, and turkey, but there is no fucking turkey. There's no cranberry sauce, no green bean casserole, or Parker House rolls in that 1621 shindig, which wasn't a Thanksgiving at all. The Pilgrims would announce a Thanksgiving in 1623, but they never called that shindig in 1621 a Thanksgiving. So it wasn't a Thanksgiving. It was a green, at the most, a green harvest festival, but really it was Massasoit and the Wampanoag shaking down the British, the Pilgrims. William Bradford and Company. So the 90, Massasoit comes over with 90 people, and he's like, what the hell y'all doing? 90 of them, right? So Chief Massasoit, 90 Pokanoket, or 90 Wampanoags, and the British were just shooting their guns off, just, having a merry time, shooting their guns, and then that's what kind of tripped the Pokanoket and the Wampanoags, like, what the hell's going on over there? And so essentially they jump them. The Massasoit, Chief Massasoit, just kind of descends upon them, and they just said they wanted to talk, and then they talked about a political and military alliance, and then after they had agreed to a political and military alliance, essentially, I'll defend you, you defend me, so your enemy is my enemy, and we're going to be friends. So kind of a blood bond thing. So yeah, that's great for William Bradford and the Wampanoags at first, but the Wampanoags had allowed the so-called Pilgrims to go ahead and stake a claim in their own Patuxent lands, right? Squanto and his people's lands. So by this political and military agreement, it allowed the Pilgrims to stay right where they were at, and then also got them a military alliance. It got them some backing. And then once they had agreed to this political military alliance, Chief Massasoit and company goes and gets the food. So the Wampanoag and the Poconet, they go get 5 white-tailed deer, some waterfowl, some grain, and one other thing. There's 4 specific things that was mentioned with the primary source documents. So go back and look at the primary source document, but there was 4 specific things. And those 4 specific things was Indian corn, grain, venison, and waterfowl. And that's it. Those are the only 4 things that are specifically mentioned that was served at the first Thanksgiving, the so-called first Thanksgiving, which wasn't a Thanksgiving. At no point in time did William Bradford say we were, there was prayers, but they didn't say, they would say it was an official day of Thanksgiving. They would say that 1623 was an official day of Thanksgiving. So when there was an official day, they would, announce it very loudly. Today is Thanksgiving. 1621 was not a Thanksgiving. So it was a green corn festival, harvest, and it was a military political alliance. So it was very much a Massasoit's shakedown. And maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say it's a total shakedown. He could have been very friendly, right? It makes it seem like it was just they're playing games and wrestling and their sports. And so for 3 days, it was a nice wild festival like Woodstock. Oh my God, it's like Woodstock, right? So, but just know what you're talking about, right? If you eat turkey tomorrow, you're basically, shitting on America. You're shitting on American history. There was no fucking turkey there. There was no cranberry sauce, no green bean casserole, no Parker House rolls. If you have some white-tailed deer, if you have venison, then you're in the right. Waterfowl, that would be duck, geese. So they'll go out to the water and shoot the birds. Waterfowl, so that's duck and geese. And then you have white-tailed deer. And then you have Indian corn, a.k.a. maize. And then they would also go ahead and make cornmeal out of it. So just take the dried Indian corn and then rub it into a fine powder. So it's like flour, like wheat, flour. Grain could have been barley or wheat, probably barley. They talked about barley. They had pea crops, but the peas didn't come in very well. So wheat, barley, cornmeal, grain, Indian corn, venison, waterfowl, duck, or geese. That's it. Those are the only things that was specifically mentioned. Anything else could be inferred. You could go ahead and say, well, they live in this area, and during that time period, there was all these. Yeah, maybe they had a big old fucking buffalo, but they didn't say buffalo, so why would you assume it? I mean, buffalo is in the United States, right? Get some bison. Oh, it's Thanksgiving. Let's get some bison. So their peas, the crop wasn't worth a scrap of frog shit, so it didn't come up. They mentioned that they had barley. They mentioned that there was wild turkeys and mussels and lobsters, too. So they could have been eating, like, high on the hog, right, with fucking lobsters. They had a big old, like a nice red lobster fucking meal. Took lobster and then took the cornmeal and fried it and had fried cornmeal, lobster, I don't know. And you can make it up, right? But the only evidence, there's no evidence that there was turkey. There was none. There's zero evidence that there was turkey at the 1621. At the Thanksgiving that everybody says is Thanksgiving, that isn't Thanksgiving. So there's no fucking turkey there. It's not a real Thanksgiving thing. There were several Thanksgivings actually done before 1621. So they announced it officially 2 years later in 1623. So they knew what Thanksgiving was about, chose not to say that the 1621 celebration was Thanksgiving. And then there was in El Paso, the Spanish conquistadors, and in Florida. There's been, about 10 to, half a dozen to a dozen other claims before 1621. See, they can't even say that they're the so-called first Thanksgiving. There weren't a Thanksgiving whatsoever. There was other Thanksgivings before then, and they weren't a Thanksgiving whatsoever. And they didn't have fucking turkey. They didn't have any turkey. So, waterfowl, ducks and geese. I don't think I've ever ate ducks or geese a day in my life. But that's, if you want to observe the holiday 1621 feast between the Wampanoags and the so-called Puritans, which they're not the Puritans either. They're Brown separatists. And so this, I think, is important to understand. So the Brown separatists, These were folks who had followed Robert Brown. Now, Robert Brown was a defector from the Church of England for about 10 to 15 years. So he actually keeps on working for the Church of England, but he was an active separatist from 79 to 85. So only for 6 years did Robert Brown fight against the Church of England, so from 1579 to 1585, but his ideas were influential enough that the Mayflower passengers in 1620 would call themselves Brownist, and they were part of the Brownist movement, and the Brownist separatist movement was to separate from the Church of England because they didn't like the top-down Puritan ways. They believed in congregational principles, essentially that every church, every congregation dictates for itself what kind of church they get to belong to. And so that's what the separatists were. They were Brownist separatists, not Puritans. The Puritans were the ones for purifying the church. They weren't for purifying it. They were for doing something differently. So they were essentially... they were for religious freedom for themselves, but they were very rigorous in the way that they viewed things, and they believed in the congregational form of Protestantism of the Church of England. They believed in the Congregationist form of the Church of England, and so that's who the Mayflower folks were. The people were followers of Robert Brown. They were Brownist. They were separatists, but they were not Puritans. The Puritans were the ones actually controlling the Church of England, and so they called themselves Puritans because they believed top down, whereas the Brownist separatist was more bottom up. So the Brownist separatist, I think, is more democratic, right? It's more fair, more for the people. And eventually they go to Dutch, they go to Netherlands, they can't establish a church there, then they come to the United States, and John Carver is, I think, elected governor. Could that be true? Was he elected governor? Because I found that out too. So, quick correction. I had said that, not Winslow, but Winthrop. So, that was John Winthrop who gave the City on a Hill speech. We're going to establish this new nation upon this rock, upon Plymouth Rock. Establish a new nation. The whole world is watching us. So, like America, we're that city on a hill, and so the world is watching us, and they're paying attention to who we are. So, it's an example of American exceptionalism. We're the pioneers, so we might have to wipe out a whole bunch of Native Americans in order to establish our white society. But history will forget all about that unless there is there is one more, right? So, John Carver. He's the first governor in 1620. Then William Bradford is governor for 11 years, 1621 to 1632. Then it's Edward Winslow, then Thomas Prince, then William Bradford, Edward Winslow, William Bradford, Thomas Prince, and then William Bradford for another 4 years. Then Edward Winslow. These are all single years. And then William Bradford for another 11 years, and then Thomas Prince for another 15 years, and then Josiah Winslow, and then Thomas Hinckley, and that brings us up to 1692. So there was John Carver for 1 year, William Bradford for 11 years, Edward Winslow for 1 year, Thomas Prince for 1 year, William Bradford for 1 year, Edward Winslow for 1 year, and then William Bradford in 1637. In 1637, the importance of the massacre of the Mystic River and the Pequot War. It's a horrible massacre, and then they're going to declare Thanksgiving right after this. The importance of it is that it goes ahead and gives the separate narrative for what happened with the Native Americans. They had a nice little festival, Green Corn Festival, right? They become political and military allies, and they, ate a bunch of fucking deer, didn't touch any turkey, had some duck and geese, and then some grain and some hominy, right? Some cornmeal. And they also had, what else? Grain, cornmeal, and Indian corn, and barley grain. Okay, so that's essentially it, right? So meat, duck, geese, deer, grain, barley, wheat, cornmeal. And that's it. 1637 is William Bradford. 1637 is going to be the massacre of the Mystic River, and he is the governor. William Bradford would be the governor of Plymouth Colony. And then William Bradford is going to have a little, paragraph writing about the massacre of the Mystic Fort, of the Mystic River Massacre. And it's the importance of it is essentially the Abraham Lincoln is the one who designates Thanksgiving, and then it just takes off once Lincoln designates it. Sarah Josepha Hale had been advocating 11, 12 presidents. Eventually, Abraham Lincoln sets it into motion, and then all these housewives were ready to turn Thanksgiving into a national holiday. So once Lincoln declared it, then it became a fucking thing. Then it became a national thing. All America celebrated it. And it's a prayer thing. It's a Christian thing. And so a lot of times there had been horrible things or great successes. So some, starvation or some great rain when there's a drought, then it just starts raining. And so they would just give a day of Thanksgiving, either for great fucking things or for really shitty things. And so when we think about the 1621 moment, okay, there's a good little moment between whites, the British invaders, and the Native Americans. One good moment. I think we could celebrate that. What's wrong with celebrating the good moment? But we should not lose the understanding of history. We should not use that one example to whitewash all the 16 and the 17, 15, 1400s. To just take 3 or 4 centuries and just wipe them off. And then plus they had been here for 14,000 years. So you're basically wiping out millennium, right? You're wiping out millenniums. Millennias. 14,000, what's 10,000 years? That's more than just millennia. That's a divillennia. I don't know. But 14,000 years. So you're wiping. Somebody said that, yeah, they still, ask a Native American if they celebrate Thanksgiving, and they said, just a story I heard, that we used to. Yeah, so for the last, 1863. So we've been celebrating Thanksgiving for 150 years, but most of the time, a lot of the Thanksgivings happened right after a Native American massacre, like the massacre of the Mystic River. And so when I think about Native American, white people, Native American history, I'm sure there's good pockets of good moments here and there, but there was a massive fucking genocide that happened too that wiped out 10 to 100 million Native Americans. American natives who were born on this land and been here for thousands of years, before anybody else, before Columbus got here. So that's a little bit piece of information there. I had mentioned that Winthrop was first official elected in America. It turns out there's this Meister Edward Maria Wingfield. So Mr. Wingfield in 1607, John Smith, there was a council. The council voted for the president. So April 26, 1607, there was an election. So that actually beats John Winthrop. So he was definitely the first governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony, elected governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony. And maybe the Massachusetts, province, but John Winthrop, I think it was 1631, but I just wanted to correct that because I had said it very loud and very confidently that he was the first elected official in the U.S., but I think that there's a line of demarcation. I declared it. Can you prove it wrong? And if you can, then good. We're all learning, right? So when you want to go to the primary source, we see that there's no there's no turkey, there's no green bean casserole, no Parker House rolls, no cranberry sauce. There could have been cranberries, but they weren't making sauce out of it for a while. There could have been the Americas. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's in America that's indigenous to America. And so actually let's go down that list. You have vanilla, chocolate, pineapple, tomato, potato, corn, chili peppers, hot peppers, green bell peppers, pecans. It's the Algonquin word, which means all nuts requiring a stone to crack. Pequot were Algonquin speakers. Wild rice, passion fruit, peanut, pumpkin, avocado, papaya, beans, squash, zucchini, berries, nuts, acorns, chia, sunflowers, maple. And then cranberry sauce, just the caveat I want to mention, there were cranberries back then, but they didn't make the sauce until later on. And so pecans, they would use them for currency. The cocoa beans, the cacao beans. It's basically cocoa came from cacao. People didn't like saying cacao, so they just said cocoa. And cocoa is an easier word, so essentially the misspelling and mispronunciation is why we have cocoa, chocolate cocoa. And tobacco. These are all plants that are indigenous to this continent. So the Europeans didn't know about any of this stuff until they got here. What's this tobacco? What's this pumpkin? What's this pineapple? What's this tomato, potato, corn, chili, vanilla, and chocolate? So where we get vanilla and chocolate flavorings, right? White, black, pineapples, tomatoes. And actually I heard vanilla isn't naturally white, so we have to dye it white. Why are we doing all that? Peppers, corn, potatoes. So there's hemp. Hemp was widely grown throughout colonial America. I don't know if it was originally here, but in the early 1600s, Virginia, Massachusetts, and Connecticut colonies required farmers to grow hemp. So I'm just going to finish this off with the meals, just with the meals, okay? So there is green, Indian corn is very specific, white-tailed deer is very specific, waterfowl are your ducks and your geese. You're not going to call turkeys waterfowl. They're birds, but they're not out of the water. They're all over the place. So waterfowl, your ducks, and your geese, and that's it. You had corn, you had grain. So from the Indian cornmeal, barley, maybe wheat. So grain and deer and ducks and geese, and that's it. So turn their Indian corn into cornmeal for hominy, but pumpkin. There was pumpkins around, but they would have to eat raw pumpkins. There was no pumpkin pie. Succotash, what the fuck is succotash? The three twins, they had the corn and the beans. So their agricultural techniques was actually more advanced than the Europeans. So I just wanted to make sure that you know and that I know that you know that there's no fucking turkey at the so-called first Thanksgiving. It wasn't even a Thanksgiving. They didn't call it a Thanksgiving. It wasn't called Thanksgiving until a lot later. No evidence of turkey. So there's no fucking turkey, no fucking stuffing, no pumpkin pie, no green bean casserole. They ate raw pumpkin straight out of the field, but they couldn't make a pastry. They couldn't make a pie. There was no ham, no candied yams, a.k.a. sweet potatoes. There were no sweet potatoes in North America at the time. So sweet potatoes are indigenous to this continent, but it was in South America. They haven't got up to North America yet. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. So that was the good thing about the ancient Christians. They couldn't bow down to a Roman emperor because they were only bowed down to one man, one invisible man in the clouds, and that was it. So the Ben Franklin thing, well, I'll make a different video of that. But waterfowl is either a goose or a duck, which I've never ate a geese, or a duck in my life. I don't know what the fucking duck would taste like. Not a fucking turkey. It's like a feathered pig. It's not a waterfowl. It's not like a goose or duck. You would specifically say we had turkey. You wouldn't say we went out fowling. Fowling is shooting the birds, the little birds. And so when you're stuffing that turkey, just know that you're not just stuffing it with, spiced bread. Just know that you're stuffing that turkey with a bunch of lies. Okay, that's what you're doing. You're stuffing that turkey with lies and propaganda and genocide. And the turkey massacre continues, even though there is no fucking turkey at the first Thanksgiving. At the 1621 Thanksgiving that you all think that you are celebrating, there is no fucking turkey there. And that's crazy. The turkey massacre continues, right? So it was a genocide, Thanksgiving, Native Americans, it's a whole, and then we just, every year, we celebrate it with a fucking genocide. Think about what Ben Franklin wanted this to become a national symbol, the turkey. So he didn't, advocate for or push it. He just kind of floated the idea to his daughter. So Benjamin Franklin writes a letter to his daughter, January 1784, and he's basically just shitting on the eagle. He was talking about, there's a picture of an eagle, but he said it looked like a turkey, and then he was like, you know what? When I compare the eagle to a turkey is a bird of courage, whereas an eagle is a coward. An eagle will wait for other birds to catch the fish and then go after that bird and take the fish away from that bird instead of getting the fish itself. And so he was basically saying he liked the turkey better than the eagle in a private letter to his daughter. He was in Paris at the time, January 26, 1784. And so he just disapproved the United States adopting the bald eagle as our national symbol, and that was it. So just some musings some musings to his daughter, but because, you know, it's fucking Ben Franklin, right, and he's shitting on the bald eagle. But just, you know, think about it. Like, he's also saying that the turkey is respectable. It's a true original native of the United States. It's a little vain and silly, but as a bird of courage, it wouldn't hesitate to attack a grenadier of the British Guards who should presume to invade his farmyard with a red coat on. And so, you know, bald eagle are kind of fucking cool, right? Eagle is like a hawk is like, ah! I heard actually his scream is like, but the turkey, go! But he's saying basically the turkey is a better defender and a fighter and has more honor and more courage than the bald eagle does. Okay, maybe that's true, maybe it's not true. But just, can you imagine if we would have picked the turkey as our national symbol and the bald eagle is what we had got Thanksgiving mixed up with? So every year we would sacrifice millions of bald eagles so we can carve it up and then put it in our face and then drink wine and then laugh about, you know, whatever white people drink wine and laugh, you know, whatever kind of jokes white people like. So that's what we're doing, right? So this is what Thanksgiving is all about. It seems like you would have a problem with cutting up a bunch of eagles, bald eagles, and eating the bald eagles, making the bald eagle the center display of the entire meal, and then having sides all around the bald eagle. To have another, I mean, it's a massacre. It literally is a turkey genocide every fucking year, on top of the genocide that we've already had. So, God, so much fucking bloodshed, right? And I don't know. I mean, we got to eat, what have you. And I do eat meat, but I feel bad as fuck about it. But just as a ritual, no, we got to. Why we got to eat bald eagle? Well, we did it last year and the year before, and, you know, the great feast, and we all had, you know, family, and it's all time to be together in abundance. Okay, well, let's get 5 bald eagles. Let's put 5 bald eagles on the table here, on the family dinner table, and just start eating big old bald eagles. So, yeah, the turkey could have been our national bird every fucking year, you know, right? We're eating bald eagles. And, yeah, so you're stuffing that turkey with lies. It's not with fucking breadcrumbs. It's with lies. And I have more, actually, to talk about food stuff, but I do feel like I should have organized this a little bit better. But that's okay. You know, I'm learning here, too. So never ever forget 9/11 or the Holocaust, the Jewish Nazi Holocaust or the Native American Holocaust, because it was 10 to 100 million people. And so when we honor Thanksgiving, I think we should actually be very cognizant of the history and of food, of what we're eating, and really everything, right? Shouldn't we just kind of take it all in, right? So it's good to, you know, share food with Native Americans, but we're eventually going to wipe out the Wampanoags and then put the head of Metacomet on a pike in front of the village. So it was like, hey, Wampanoags, we're all friends. Pow, 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 now you're all dead. And that's just the Wampanoags. In 1637, it was the Pequot. And then it was repeated over and over and over and over again, you know, up until the Sand Creek Massacre. It was in the Civil War, so even Abraham Lincoln, his hands are not clean when it comes to the Native American genocide. He hung 38 Sioux warriors. So he's hanging warriors. 64 is when the Sand Creek Massacre happens. 165 Native American people are killed by John Shivington, which he just conquered the fucking Confederates. But I guess once you get bloodlust, once you kill a bunch of whites, I guess killing Native American, you know, sleeping Native American people didn't seem like it was shit to John Shivington. So when you look at the 15, 16, 1700s, it's mostly a fucking genocide. And so I think it's important to balance the story of Thanksgiving with the overwhelming truth or the overwhelming essence of that century. The 16th, it's called the Beaver Wars, you know, it's called the Beaver Wars, and they're all after beaver, and they're all after making money. And so, and it wasn't about governments, it was about the company, it was about commercials. Well, somebody's calling me, so I guess I'll cut this off. Peace.